Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about air tools. I got a few air tools I've been sort of resistant for years, but we're going to discuss, is it worthwhile over these inexpensive and popular battery versions? Let's find out. So one of the benefits of air tools is that they're relatively compact. They don't have a giant battery associated with the actual tool and can fit into kind of some places that you might not be able to work with. So for example, I have this little guy, Earthquake Stubby. That's almost one of the reasons I wanted a compressor in the first place, was to be able to run a stubby impact. Now this guy is good for up to 750 foot-pounds supposedly. I don't know if it quite goes that high, but definitely this has been awesome. Quite a little workhorse. And if you look at it, compare it with this electric Cobalt. This is a brushless Cobalt, and it's small also. I mean, this one is good for supposedly 200 foot-pounds, but I don't have any problems with, taking lug bolts off of large vehicles, trucks and things, as well as, some higher-end torque fasteners. And if you just look at this, see, this one is about 3 times as powerful as this one, but it's even smaller. Now, that is in comparison to a standard size one. I've got this old DeWalt, which is garbage. Do not buy a DeWalt Impact. I hate them. This one is rated, it's pretty old. It's rated for, I think, 300 foot-pounds, but it struggles to take off 75 foot-pound lug bolts. This has never worked for me. It's a wired too. It's not battery powered, but this is the size that you would get with a standard, 20 volt system, and you can see just how massive the difference is. This is crazy. So this one can actually slip in front of a radiator and take off a crank bolt. That's how powerful this little guy is. So got a good deal at Harbor Freight on a 21 gallon, it's all printed here on the front, 175 psi electric air compressor. It is oilless and it seems to work pretty good. It's not crazy loud, it's pretty loud, but I've been through the break-in period. You basically run it for 30 minutes with the valve at the bottom open. It has a nice easily accessible valve, and it's got a nice little manifold with some ports that are going to come in handy, and I'll show you that. It comes with a little 1/4 inch IM style connector, and I've got it hooked up to some really cheap nylon hosing that I use with, just for airing up tires and stuff. So that's what that's connected to. And also picked up this hose reel, which is 50 feet of air hose, and it's good for 250 psi. Gets reasonably good reviews, and we're going to mount this up. So we're going to go through the process of getting this set up the way that we want it to be, and some things that you might want to do to your compressor to make it work better for automotive use, but also just in general higher CFM tool use. So let's get into it. If we look up here, I've got these joists up here, and we're going to basically mount it kind of right there. And if I can get the light to not shine directly at me, and we're just going to kind of put it out of the way, up sort of on the ceiling. We got to move that power line. If there are any contractors in the audience, or electricians actually, tell me if this looks to code, because it really doesn't to me. This is how the garage came. This is a detached garage, and the wires are just exposed in Nomex, and it's just running across the rafters like this. I don't think that's proper code, but anyway, we'll sort of deal with that, but and work very carefully. But that's where we're going to mount the thing. And I basically got it, I tested out a few positions. If I want it facing downwards, I can mount it upside down, but then I'd have to string my line, which I got this smaller line to use as a 3/8 inch line with 1/4 inch MPT threads on the ends. to use. I'd have to get a longer line. It'd have to wrap around and be annoying, so I'm just going to do it this way. All right, the next step is we're going to mount this guy, and we've got some lag bolts that look like this. You do want to get bolts that are the right size. If you're too long, there is a problem with this device. If you notice, the upper one is this, the reel is directly in line with the bolt. So if you have too big a bolt, it doesn't matter too much on this side because you can just put it in, but on the other side where it's just a single hole, then it's a problem. And so you'll want to get the right size bolt. Also, it says 1/2 inch in the manual, but really a 3/8 is the right size. So we're going to do that. Now, the second thing you want to do is you can create a little template for where you can drill the holes, and I made this little cardboard thing and basically just screwed them in conveniently to the template, so I can unscrew these and drill right exactly where these holes are onto my joist, and we should be all good to mount this guy up. All right, so that initial plan didn't work because it sticks up too far into all those wires and stuff like that. So what I'm doing instead is I cut myself out a little with some scrap lumber, made a little shelf. Now this is going to go basically the other way around, and so this part that is supporting the reel is going to be like a little shelf on top of these blocks, which are going to screw into the joists. And so I've kind of been orienting it how I want it, just to see if I want it facing this way or, facing around towards me. And I think I'm going to do it this way, just because of the normal way I think it'll work for where I'm pulling it to. And also this keeps, doing it this way keeps the connection fitting there inwards towards the back wall of the garage. So it makes it less likely to get hit by something, walking by. It is in front of a door, so if you're walking by with something tall like a ladder or whatever, you don't want that just snapping off, getting knocked around. I unreeled this so that I could get a little bit more, little less weight, and just to make sure that it didn't snap back at, like, if I bumped it and the release, clicked off or something like that. I just zip tied this thing so that it wouldn't move while I'm hoisting it up. That would be annoying if I had both hands occupied and then it suddenly started reeling back in. That would be potentially dangerous. So I just took care of this. The other benefit of the shelf is that we can drill our holes for the lag bolts, pilot holes, and then mount the first two lags first, so that we have a place to mount it on this little part that has the the place where it slides in. So we'll mount these two first, slide it in, and then screw in the rest of them, start it by hand, and then crank it down. All right, not bad. So now we're gonna hook up the feed lines. So with this guy set up, it's got a standard release valve here. It's got this protective bar, but also, carrying bar that tilts back on its wheels. It's got the air release down here, which you can actuate pretty easily. You can tap it with your foot. And it's got the manifold here underneath the gauges. One thing I found on this was I was looking to set up two different lines and just have the connectors be on it at all times, and I found that I could not get this guy out. When I was working on it with a wrench, it started torquing it too hard, so then down here is the only thing holding it on, so I didn't want to apply too much pressure. And then when I used an impact, it kind of started stripping, you can see in there, so I just stopped. So basically what I've got is a 1/4 inch fitting on here, and it's feeding into a 3/8 inch line. Just to show you one last thing, so this is why we got these new connectors. So look at the size of that, and also look at the size of this here, if I can get some focus. So this is a lot more air for what you need. And so we can hook this up and you can just tell by the sound. All right, so we got our regulator set a little bit above 90 so that when it goes, now let's see. Yeah. So it's like just torquing in my hand. So yeah, that gives you a lot of air for what you need, and I can always switch out this little adapter fitting with a new manifold so that I can hook up my 1/4-inch line as well as my 3/8 line at the same time, with maybe a ball valve between them, so I can run 2 different things and turn one off, one on, so on, so it doesn't have to pressurize this. One little tip here, last thing, is that it's a good idea to pressurize the lines when you're before you pull them out or retract them, because it makes it a little bit less resistance, and it keeps your spring in good shape. If your spring does need to be adjusted, there's a simple way to do it. You'll notice that the thing at the bottom here is open on one side. So what you can do is pull this out all the way and then give it a few loops manually first. So pull it out all the way, give it about 3 or 4 loops around the wheel manually so that it's nice and tight, and then let it retract. And what that does is it'll help increase the spring tension. Now, I didn't even have to do this. Some people said that they do because it helps, but in my case, I feel like the spring tension is good. It's retracting just fine, and have no issues. Now, Harbor Freight markets this as being quieter and also having a much longer life than some of their older tools that they've been selling for years. And I think it is quieter. There is a break-in period. You need to run it for about 30 minutes with the pressure valve open at the bottom. But after that, it kind of settles in and it gets a lot quieter. So when that's closed and it's just pumping up normally, really it's not bad. So let's give it a shot. If you're on earphones, you may want to turn your volume down. You know, so not bad. I tested this and it's about 80 decibels when you're pretty much right up here. I had a little decibel meter on my phone and tested it. If you stand back, you know, it's easily goes down to 70 decibels. So it's not like running you out of the garage while this thing is on. If you're standing right next to it, yeah, it's a little annoying on you know, if you're there for a while, but yeah, it's not horrible. All right, so do I feel it's worth it? Yeah, this has been a good deal. I bought this for a little over $200, I think, on sale. It does come down to about $220 on a regular basis, and then you can find it for maybe about $209, $210 a couple times a year. So definitely look for that. So far, this has worked out really well for me. What I use it for is impact tools, also just air stuff around the shop, air blowing up tires and toys, and then also anything that sometimes requires testing, like pressure testing on the vehicle. That might be the coolant system, it might be testing the air system, testing for any kind of leaks or something like that. It's super useful for that. So that kind of air capability is very handy in an automotive setting. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. It's worked out well for me. I think the price is right, and it gives me some options to expand into some other areas which I haven't really tackled before. All right, that's going to do it for today. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. I'll catch you next time.